Guys, today I will show you one of the hardest hitting rogue builds in Diablo 4 Season 1 to annihilate Tier 100 Nightmare dungeons easily!
Holy shit!
That's a lot of damage!
To destroy completely everything in your path, you can reach even more DPS by using Barber Heart with longer DPS stacking time. For example, I'm using 2.5 second Barber, but if you're gonna use 4 second Barber, you're gonna annihilate these Tier 100 strongholds, dungeons really quickly, because this setup will provide you with speed, DPS, painful DPS and survivability. If that sounds interesting, then welcome. But before we continue, quick word from the sponsor DVING.net. If you don't have time for the grind, or maybe you don't want to grind, I can recommend you these guys. Simply use my promo code RBDIF or RBVIA and you will have 15% discount on absolutely all services, every goddamn service. But now let's get back to this setup. And this build is really strong because we are using actually 2 imbuements and Barber Heart. We are using Poison and Frozen/Ice. And the key point here why we can survive is that actually we are using trap as well, but our trap will trigger decoy. So I'm using heart, which will activate decoy, brutal heart, which basically by using our trap use decoy. Unfortunately, traps by itself kinda sucks cat's balls because timing has to be perfect, enemies will jump around, and most of the time you will not get enemies into the trap. But now when you paired up trap with decoy heart, oh my goodness, this combination is made in heaven. Enemies will rush your trap, boom, it's activated. Meanwhile you can deal damage to all the annoying enemies at the distance, rush yourself back into the middle, every enemy will be gathered. With the rogue I feel that enemies are kind of spreading all over the place. Necromancers are kind of blessed in a sense because you can gather enemies really quickly with your Tendrils skill, but for rogue you have to jump from one pack to another pack, from one enemy to another, and this combination with decoy and trap actually is really nasty. For the aspects though, so on my chest piece I'm using Bone Wave aspect. This one will give us 25% damage reduction from status affected enemies, and we're gonna spread status effects like wildfire with shared misery aspect. This one is really good, although I wish I had 50%. It is what it is, but gloves by itself are kinda top tier, and when those status affected enemies will deal damage to us, we will receive increased movement speed, so we can get out of shit much quicker and get into the shit much quicker as well. On my pants though, I am using pretty dope aspect, runic aspect, and this one will give us dark shadow shrouds, and these shrouds will give us extra damage reduction. I tried multiple combinations, I paired tons of damage reduction attributes, armor and health attributes. On my chest piece I have health, but you can switch for armor. I'm using health because siphoning strikes received buff with last update. Unfortunately it's still not as good as it used to be before season 1, but it's better than nothing, and with huge health pool we are kind of healing ourselves really well in this one. But if you feel still kind of squishy, you can use always momentum heals on your chest piece, but then you're gonna lose DPS. But in a sense, extra DPS in my eyes is kinda defensive stat. More DPS can give you more defense in a sense. You got me, do you feel me? Because you can kill enemies much quicker and they can deal less damage to you. For the weapons though, I'm using crossbow with all stats just to hit all those paragon board points, and crossroads to activate all the delicious buffs. All stats at later stages in the playthrough is absolutely must have. All stats, dexterity, vulnerable damage and crit damage is really nice. If you can't find crit damage, use core skill damage, but crit damage, vulnerable damage, all stats, dexterity. I'm using of course unique dagger, and that will lead us to combo points later on. After that I'm using sword sword will give us crit damage, and simply use your basic skill and you're gaining core skill damage buff. On my rings I'm using Blade Dancer, pretty self-explanatory, and Brutal Heart, which will give us extra damage reduction. Those explosions, forget about that, we need only the damage reduction. On my second ring I am using Potency, my status effect Potency against vulnerable enemies, and this aspect can be switched. I tried to deal damage against stunned enemies more. I tried a lot of combinations, and eventually I'm still somewhere testing, because there are a shit ton of things to test and combos, and there is no shooting range or anything where you can legitimately find correct numbers, because numbers all the time are changing a little bit, but changing, and all the time you have to guess or run some strongholds, dungeons multiple times to see if your calculations are correct. It's kind of annoying, but it is what it is. This is my skill tree. Really self-explanatory. For the rings though, I forgot to explain attribute, guys. All stats are kind of important. On my sword I had all stats and crit damage with vulnerable damage and of course core damage, but I am thinking maybe I will go with extra dexterity just to see how much extra DPS I can gain. If not, I will still leave just all stats, because like I said, all stats is absolutely mandatory to hit those Paragon board points to unlock all the goodies at your later stages in the game. Before level 70, 80, I think all stats is not really necessary. So yeah, on the rings though, I'm using health everywhere against siphoning strikes to receive maximum possible heals, and crit damage, crit chance, and vulnerable damage. Somebody or someone of course could replace health with resource generation. Since Barber Heart works like shadow damage, simply use couple points in shadow skill tree part, where by killing enemies you are getting your core resource back, and you are killing enemies in bunches with Barber, so you are gaining resources really quickly. So it means we don't need actually resource generation, we need extra survivability, and Barber Heart will deal insane amount of damage. You're gonna destroy enemies in packs, and you will get tons and tons of resources, trust me. This is my Paragon board. Again, I tried multiple combinations. I switched some legendary nodes here and there. I switched the paths. I went for damage against crowd controlled enemies. I went for basic skill damage, for combo with basic skill damage and core skill damage boost, and eventually this is my pick. I have 6 boards. I think I squeeze maximum DPS out of this one. Combat, as you see, I reach damage to healthy enemies, and I have only one node is not activated at the last stage, because I need somewhere 630 intelligence, and it's basically impossible. Yeah, other than that, I have managed to unlock every possible buff in my Paragon board, and that's the reason why we are hitting almost 100 mil per crit. This is I'm talking about. I haven't unlocked this one, and I never will unlock this one, so I will not be disappointed, but still we have tons of damage. But again, there are multiple ways how you can switch this setup. We have extra damage to elite. You can use more damage in your ambush skill tree by